In the previous film on the subject, we looked at the origins of the human language by using shared mythological tropes amongst them, which came in the form of the water serpent or guardian. While being a strong indicator of how many of the human groups in the Colorado Delta and Middle Baja California Peninsula moved around and brought these stories with them, it is not the only shared myth amongst the human speakers, and not only amongst them, but also the Uto Aztecans they live next to. One of the tropes this came in is that of Wikami, or Kuchamaa, the sacred mountain that was the center of creation for their cosmologies, and how the influx of people was also corroborated by those same Uto Aztecans. This evidence that has been compiled will be the focus of this film, as well as other traditions shared between them that bring into question when exactly and how far back the Western human peoples of southwestern and upper Baja California migrated and interacted with the peoples who were there, or if they may have come before, and what traditions they might have picked up on from their neighbors. The sacred mountain of Kuchamaa, modern-day Tecate Peak, which sits on the US-Mexican border, is pivotal to the cosmology of not only the Kumeyaay, on whose land it is on today, but many other groups, specifically that of the Luiseno, speakers of a Takic language of the Uto Aztecan family, with whom it is said there were many quarrels involving the divine, which will be mentioned later. According to the Kumeyaay, Kuchamaa was a mountain created at the beginning of time by the creator Maihai, where a spirit of the same name would reside before his incarnation. He was then sent down as the Kusiyai, or shaman, living on the south side of the mountain, and taught the shamans of other nations many things, including sacred knowledge, rituals, and dances, so they could pass on these lessons to these peoples. The shamans came from not only the Kumeyaay, but also from the Kiliwa, Cocopa, Paipai, and Quechua, all human speakers, and the Cahuilla, Cupeño, and the Kuway, i.e. the Akashaman and Luiseno, who were Uto Aztecan speakers. One of the key tenets in this lesson was promoting cooperation between groups to help one another and never resort to violence. However, as is true with human nature, conflict did end up arising between groups, in this case with the shamans of the Luiseno, as recounted by a Kumeyaay elder. Quote, "One time, some shamans of other tribes were jealous of Kuchamaa's power and the power of the mountain, so they tried to destroy the mountain. According to the legend, all the Kusiyai held a contest, much like the power contest of Elijah and the prophets of Baal in the book of 2 Kings in the Bible. The elders said some of the Kuwai shamans sent their power over the mountain and tried to destroy it. They were only able to damage one side of the mountain, leaving a split on the side which is still visible. Then the Kumeyaay shamans sent their power over the Kuwai land and destroyed some of their sacred places to show everyone that Kuchamaa was the most powerful. Other shaman contests were held on the mountain, each shaman trying to demonstrate his power for the others." Unquote. It is also an interesting note how the messianic role of Kuchamaa is similar to that of Chinich of the Takic speakers north of the Kumeyaay. Could this be an example of a shared oral history of a messianic prophetic figure who came down from the divine realm and taught the people sacred knowledge and rituals? An oasis in the desert. It is no surprise that Lake Cahuilla has always attracted peoples to its shores, notable being those belonging to the Uto Aztecan and Yuman-speaking groups. However, between the 500s to 1500s, the lake experienced fluctuations in its ecosystem and level. In the birdsong cycles of the Western Yuman, such as the Kumeyaay, Quechans, Cocopa, and Mojave, sing of the long walk from the sacred mountain of Wikami. They ascribe it to Spirit Mountain in southern Nevada, to their current homelands. They shared much of their oral traditions with the neighboring Uto Aztecan Takic speakers, such as the Luiseno and Cahuilla, and these songs date to the same time period as aforementioned, 500 to 1500 AD. And most likely having to do with the drying out of Lake Cahuilla and subsequent migrations of both overarching language families from the region. One of these song cycles is in regards to the journey of Chaup, or Ball Lightning, across the known world of the Western Humans, a hero who made many plants and animals and was grandson of Earth Mother. When recanting the story, a sand painting 15 by 18 feet was created, where mounds of sand denoted the borders between various groups around the Western Humans. It is then sung in 3 different languages, starting in Quechan, then Mojave, and finishing in Kumeyaay. The Mojave refer to themselves as the youngest of the 3, and the Kumeyaay as the oldest. According to researchers, this song cycle of a shared origin story is told from the perspective of us in this regard being the human speakers, who by speaking different languages show a kinship amongst one another, and how they interact with their Uto Aztecan neighbors. One example is in an episode of these songs about how Chop went deep underground to search for his grandmother. He succeeds in the task, and they end up coming back up through either San Jacinto or San Bernardino mountains, which they said was at the confluence of where the Cahuilla, Luiseno, and Kumeyaay borders met. Another details the journey by Chop from the northeasternmost desert of the known Kumeyaay territory, going south, then west to Ensenada, north to Catalina Island, back east to Cahuilla territory, and finally returning back to the northeastern desert Sometimes in these stories, the peoples mentioned were included with southwestern motifs, such as corn. Now, what evidence has been uncovered by archaeologists, linguists, and anthropologists in the archaeological record? Some notable examples that promote a shared culture between the Yumans and Uto Aztecans are the shared phonological sounds in the language of the Cupeño in Sineo County alongside Highway 77. There also exists the fact that some human nations, specifically the Ipai branch of Kumeyaay, had a social structure that was similar to those of the nearby Uto Aztecans, being organized patrilineally. Could this lend credence to the theories that the humans arrived after the Uto Aztecans there? According to one Kumeyaay elder, they, the Kumeyaay, migrated into the Temecula area, where they encountered the Luiseño, already living there, and helped them create Lake Elsinore. However, what is more plausible, and has been the main theory, with the most evidence supported by researchers, is that the ancestors of the Cupeño people, by around 1000 BC, left the southern San Joaquin Valley in the modern Lancaster area, and settled lands south that were already populated by human speakers. The human influences on the Cupeño language is explained as an integration of the previous culture and fusing them together with theirs. Although it is a controversial subject, whether the humans or the Uto Aztecans settled the lands of what is now Southern California first, there is no doubt they interacted and even were influenced by their neighbors in traditions and social structures, which shows how interconnected the indigenous peoples of Southern California were with one another.